Good morning. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Pray First. How is everyone doing this morning? I cannot believe we're already at Hump Day. It is Wednesday. I think it's the 18th of May. It is the 18th of May. So I'm going to wait for you guys all to come on in here so we can keep chatting with each other. Remember, Pray First. Pray First is conversation that we have Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Good morning, Neil Hedges. How are you doing this morning? It is a beautiful, beautiful day here in the Mid-South. I have no idea how hot it's going to get, but I figured I'd enjoy the time in the morning while I can. Good morning, Leanne. Good morning, Brenda Smith. Hey, Michelle Edge. Are you back from the beach or are you still on the beach? Good morning, Barbie Shook. How are you doing? Hi, Ed Rose. How are you doing this morning, sir? Hi, Corrine Stickley. I'm going to have to try and talk louder. Good morning, Sean. Because I realized that the airplanes and the birds, and I'm soft-spoken as it is, but I had to be outside with you guys. So I hope everyone is doing really, really good this morning. Pastor Doug is on vacation, so I am filling in for him today. That's what I love about Pray First, is that we get to rotate and different people get to talk with you at different times. Sometimes we share something that God's laid on our hearts, and other times we are trying really hard to get through this Bible project. Remember, the Bible project is several fold. We are burying Bibles in all 50 states. So if you have a Bible that has not been buried yet, know that I will be reaching out probably next week to kind of get a status on what's going on with that. And we're also reading through the Bible in the Message version. And I'm excited. We are in 2 Kings right now, gleaning a lot from learning about the different kings in the Old Testament and knowing, goodness gracious, we have to watch their character, we have to watch God's character, and we learn so much from that. So it may seem tedious at times. All these names might trip me up as I get a little tongue-tied, but let me tell you, I'm learning a lot, and I hope you are too. Good morning, Courtney. Good morning, Bonnie Mason. Hi, Anita Henson. I miss seeing you. Or I may have seen you recently, and I have a terrible memory when it comes to names and faces. It's terrible. Good morning, Randall Gregory. I hope you're doing well today. All right, guys. Without much further ado, I am going to go ahead and get started reading from 2 Kings chapter 16. Oh my gosh, I almost said Chronicles. I've already jumped ahead 2 different books. All right, so Pastor Dennis left us off with Jotham of Judah, and I get to start with Ahaz of Judah. Are you ready? Good morning, Casey Hedges. Hey, Audra Scott. How are you doing? Hey, Sarah Taylor. All right. I can get so tracked just talking to you guys because it's a lot of fun. And I love that you guys talk to each other. And before I forget, because see, I've already forgot, can you guys hashtag live, hashtag record to let me know when you guys are on here? Also, I love the bouquet of hearts and thumbs up. Remember, that's letting people know that we are glad that they're here. And of course, share this out. You never know who it's going to reach. And that then they can join our great, incredible community of fellowship of fun. All right, guys, let's do this. Chapter 16. In the 17th year of Pekah, son of Remaliah, Ahaz, son of Jotham, became king of Judah. Ahaz was 20 years old when he became king, and he ruled for 16 years in Jerusalem. He didn't behave in the eyes of his God. He wasn't at all like his ancestor David. Instead, he followed on the track of the kings of Israel. He even indulged in the outrageous practice of passing his son through the fire, a truly abominable act he picked up from the pagans God had utterly thrown out of the country. He also participated in the activities in the neighborhood sex and religion shrines that flourished all over the place. I remember the first time that I was thinking about all the different things that God had the kings do, when he came in and said, annihilate everyone and not destroy everything. Don't let a single thing live. I always thought in the initial, I'm like, but what about? But the reason why is because God knew that, God knew how abominable, I think that's the word that we just read, some of the cultures were, and he wanted to annihilate them. Can you imagine burning your own son? Sorry, that was my little 2 cents worth. Verse 5, Then Rezin, king of Aram, and Pekah, son of Remaliah, king of Israel, ganged up against Jerusalem, throwing a siege around the city, but they couldn't make further headway against Ahaz. At about this same time, and on another front, the king of Edom recovered the port of Elath and expelled the men of Judah. The Edomites occupied Elath and have been there ever since. Ahaz sent envoys to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, with this message, I'm your servant and your son. Come and save me from the heavy-handed invasion of the king of Aram and the king of Israel. They're attacking me right now. Then Ahaz robbed the treasures of the palace of the temple of God of their gold and silver and sent them to the king of Assyria as a bribe.
The king of Assyria responded to him. He attacked and captured Damascus. He deported the people to Nineveh as exiles. Rezin he killed. King Hadad went to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, in Damascus. The altar in Damascus made a great impression on him. He sent back to Uriah the priest a drawing and set of blueprints of the altar. Uriah the priest built the altar to the specifications that King Hadad had sent from Damascus. By the time the king returned from Damascus, Uriah had completed the altar. The minute the king saw the altar, he approached it with reverence and arranged a service of worship with a full course of offerings. Whole burnt offerings with billows of smoke, grain offerings, libations and drink offerings, the sprinkling of bread for the peace offerings, the works. But the old bronze altar that signaled the presence of God, he displaced from its central place and pushed it off to the side of his new altar. This is crazy to me if you think about this. How many generations, it's not that many generations this man is separated from David. And look at the evil that he's doing. It's as if he's forgotten our God completely. Then King Hadad ordered Uriah the priest, from now on, offer all the sacrifices on the new altar, the great altar, morning whole burnt offerings, evening grain offerings, the king's whole burnt offerings and grain offerings, the people's whole burnt offerings and grain offerings, and also the drink offerings. Splash all the blood from the burnt offerings and sacrifices against this altar. The old bronze altar will be for my personal use. The priest Uriah followed King Ahaz's order to the letter. Then he proceeded to plunder the temple furniture of all its bronze. He stripped the bronze from the temple furnishings, even salvaged the 4 bronze oxen that supported the huge basin, the sea, and set the sea unceremoniously on the stone pavement. Finally, he removed any distinctive features from within the temple that were offensive to the king of Assyria. The rest of the life and times of Ahaz is written in the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. Ahaz died and was buried with his ancestors in the city of David. His son Hezekiah became the next king. In the 12th year of Ahaz, king of Judah, Hoshea, son of Elah, became king of Israel. He ruled in Samaria for 9 years. As far as God was concerned, he lived a bad life, but not nearly as bad as the kings who had preceded him. Then Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, attacked. Hoshea was already a puppet of the Syrian king and regularly sent his tribute. But Shalmaneser discovered that Hosea had been operating traitorously behind his back, having worked out a deal with the king of Egypt. And adding insult to injury, Hoshea was way behind in his annual payments of tribute to Assyria. So the king of Assyria arrested him and threw him in prison, then proceeded to invade the entire country. He attacked Samaria and threw up a siege against it. The siege lasted 3 years. In the 9th year of Hosea's reign, the king of Assyria captured Samaria and took the people into exile in Assyria. He relocated them to Halah and Gozan along the Habor River, and in the towns of the Medes. The exile came about because of sin. The children of Israel sinned against God, their God, who had delivered them from Egypt in the brutal oppression of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. They took up with other gods, fell in with the ways of life of the pagan nations God had chased off, and went along with whatever their kings did. They did all kinds of things on the sly, things offensive to their God, then openly and shamelessly built local sex and religion shrines of every available site. They set up their sex and religion symbols at practically every crossroad. Everywhere you look, there was smoke from their pagan offerings to the deities, the identical offerings that had gotten the pagan nations off into exile. They had accumulated a long list of evil actions, and God was fed up with their persistent worship of gods carved out of dead wood or shaped out of clay, even though God had plainly said, "Don't do this ever." God had taken a stand against Israel and Judah, speaking clearly through countless holy prophets and seers time and time again. Turn away from your evil way of life. Do what I tell you and have been telling you in the revelation I gave your ancestors, of which I've kept reminding you ever since through my servants and prophets. But they wouldn't listen. If anything, they were even more bullheaded than their stubborn ancestors, if that's possible. They were contemptuous of his instruments, the solemn and holy covenant he had made with their ancestors, and of his repeated reminders and warnings. They lived a nothing life and became nothings, just like the pagan people around them. They were well warned. Don't, said God, but they did it anyways. They threw out everything God, their God, had told them and replaced him with 2 statue gods shaped like bull calves and the phallic pole for the whore goddess Asherah. They worshipped cosmic forces, sky gods and goddesses, and frequented the sex and religion shrines of Baal. They even sank so low as to offer their own sons and daughters as sacrificial burnt offerings. They indulged in all the black arts of magic and sorcery. In short, they prostituted themselves to every kind of evil available to them. And God had had enough. God was so thoroughly angry that he got rid of them, got them out of the country for good, until only one tribe was left, Judah. Judah actually wasn't much better, for Judah also failed to keep God's commands, falling into the same way of life that Israel had adopted. God rejected everyone connected with Israel, made life hard for them, and permitted anyone with a mind to exploit them to do so. And this final no as he threw them out of his sight. Back at the time that God ripped Israel out of their place in the family of David, they had made Jeroboam, son of Nebat, king. Jeroboam debauched Israel, turned them away from serving God, and led them into a life of total sin. The children of Israel went along with all the sins that Jeroboam did, never murmured so much as a word of protest. In the end, God spoke a final no to Israel and turned his back on them. He had given them fair warning and plenty of time through the preaching and all of his servants, the prophets. Then he exiled Israel from her land to Assyria, and that's where they are now. The king of Assyria brought in people from Babylon, Cutha, Ava, Hamath, and Sepharvaim, and relocated them in the towns of Samaria, replacing the exiled Israelites. They moved in as if they owned the place and made themselves at home. When the Assyrians first moved in, God was just another god to them. They neither honored nor worshipped him. Then God sent lions among them, and people were mauled and killed. This message was then sent back to the king of Assyria. The people you brought in to occupy the towns of Samaria don't know what's expected of them from the God of the land. And now he sent lions, and they're killing people right and left because nobody knows what the God of the land expects of them. So the king of Assyria ordered, send back some priests who are taking the exile from there. They can go back and live there and instruct the people in what the God of the land expects of them. One of the priests who had been exiled from Samaria came back and moved into Bethel. He taught them how to honor and worship God. But each people that Assyria had settled with went ahead and already made its own god and set them up in the neighborhood sex and religion shrines that the citizens of Samaria had left behind. A local custom made God for each people. For Babylon, Succoth-Benoth. For Cutha, Nergal. For Hamath, Ashima. For Ava, Nebaz, and Tartak. For Sepharvaim, Adammelech, and Anamelech, people burned their children in sacrificial offerings to these gods. They honored and worshiped God, but not exclusively. They also appointed all sorts of priests, regardless of qualification, to conduct a variety of rites at the local fertility shrines. They honored and worshiped God, but they also kept up their devotions to the old gods of the places they had come from. And they're still doing it, still worshiping any old god that has nostalgic appeal to them. They don't really worship God. They don't take seriously what he says regarding how to behave and what to believe and what he revealed to his children of Jacob, whom he named Israel. God made a covenant with his people and ordered them. Don't honor other gods. Don't worship them. Don't serve them. Don't offer sacrifices to them. Worship God, the God who delivered you from Egypt in great and personal power. Reverence and fear him. Worship him. Sacrifice to him and only to him. All the things he had written down for you, directing you in what to believe and how to behave, well, do them for as long as you live. And whatever you do, don't worship other gods. And the covenant he made with you, don't forget your part in that. And don't worship other gods. Worship God and God alone. He is the only one who will save you from enemy oppression. But they didn't pay any attention. They kept doing what they'd always done. And as it turned out, all the time these people were putting out a front of worshiping God, they were at the same time involved with their local idols. And they're still doing it, like father, like son. I'm going to get somewhat through chapter 18, my friends. Chapter 18, Hezekiah of Judah. In the 3rd year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Hezekiah, son of Ahaz, began his rule over Judah. He was 25 years old when he became king, and he ruled for 29 years in Jerusalem. His mother's name was Abijah, daughter of Zechariah. In God's opinion, he was a good king. He kept to the standards of his ancestor David. He got rid of the local fertility shrines, smashed the phallic stone monuments, and cut down the sex and religion Asherah groves. As a final stroke, he pulverized the ancient bronze serpent that Moses had made at the time the Israelites had taken up the practice of sacrificing to it. They had even dignified it with a name, Neshushtan, the old serpent. Hezekiah put his whole trust in the God of Israel. There is no king quite like him, either before or after. He held fast to God, never loosened his grip, and obeyed to the letter everything God had commanded Moses. And God, for his part, held fast to him through all of his adventures. He revolted against the king of Assyria. He refused to serve him one more day, and he drove back the Philistines, whether in sentry outposts or fortress cities, all the way to Gaza and its borders. In the 4th year of Hezekiah's and in the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, attacked Samaria. He threw a siege around it, and after 3 years captured it. It was in the 9th year of Hezekiah and the 9th year of Hoshea that Samaria fell to Assyria. The king of Assyria took Israel into exile and relocated them to Halah and Gozan on the harbor river and in the towns of the Medes. All this happened because they wouldn't listen to the voice of their God and treated his covenant with careless contempt. They refused either to listen or do a word of what Moses, the servant of God, commanded. In the 14th year of King Hezekiah, Sennacherib, king of Assyria, attacked all the outlying fortress cities of Judah and captured them. King Hezekiah sent a message to the king of Assyria at his headquarters in Lachish. I'm done wrong, I'll admit it. Put back your army, I'll pay whatever tribute you said. The king of Assyria demanded tribute from Hezekiah, king of Judah, 11 tons of silver and a ton of gold. Hezekiah turned over all the silver he could find in the temple of God and the palace treasuries. Hezekiah even took down the doors of the temple of God and the doorposts that he overlaid with gold and gave them to the king of Assyria. So the king of Assyria sent his top 3 military chiefs, the Tartan, the Rabsaris, and the Rabshakeh, from Lachish with a strong military force to King Hezekiah in Jerusalem. When they arrived at Jerusalem, they stopped at the aqueduct of the upper pool on the road to the laundry commons. They called loudly for the king, Eliakim son of Hilkiah, who was in charge of the palace. Shebna, the royal secretary, and Joash, son of Asaphat, the court historian, went out to meet them. The third officer, the Rabshakeh, was spokesman. He said, "Tell Hezekiah a message from the great king, the king of Assyria. You're living in a world of make-believe, a pious fantasy. Do you think that mere words are any substitute for military strategy and troops? Now that you've revolted against me, who can you expect to help you? You thought Egypt would, but Egypt's nothing but a paper tiger. One puff of wind and she collapses. Pharaoh, king of Egypt, is nothing but bluff and bluster. Or are you going to tell me we rely on God?" But Hezekiah has just eliminated most of the people's access to God by getting rid of all the local God shrines, ordering everyone in Judah and Jerusalem, "You must worship at the Jerusalem altar alone. So be reasonable. Make a deal with my master, the king of Assyria. I'll give you 2,000 horses if you think you can provide riders for them. You can't do it. Well then, how do you think you're going to turn back even one raw buck, private from my master's troops? How long are you going to hold on to what figment of imagination these hope for Egyptian chariots and horses? Do you think I've come up here to destroy this country without the express approval of God? The fact is that God expressly ordered me, attack and destroy this country." Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, and Shebna, teachers are stuck together. Apparently I'm not supposed to read more. Okay, here we go. And Joash said to Habeshkah, "Please speak to us in the Aramaic language we understand. We understand Aramaic. Don't speak in Hebrew. Everyone crowded in the city will hear you." But the Habeshkeh said, "We weren't sent with a private message to your master and you. This is public, a message to everyone within earshot. After all, they're involved in this as well as you. If you don't come to terms, they'll be eating their own turds and drinking their own pee right along with you. Ew." Then he stepped forward and spoke in Hebrew, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Listen carefully to the words of the king of Assyria. Don't let Hezekiah fool you. He can't save you. And don't let Hezekiah give you that line about trusting in God, telling you God will save us. This city will never be abandoned to the king of Assyria. Don't listen to Hezekiah. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Listen to the king of Assyria. Deal with me and live the good life. I'll guarantee everyone your own plot of ground, a garden and a well. I'll take you to a land sweeter by far than this one, a land of grain and wine, bread and vineyards, olive orchards and honey. You only live once, so live. Really live. No, don't listen to Hezekiah. Don't listen to his lies, telling you God will save us. Has there ever been a God anywhere who delivered anyone from the king of Assyria? Where are the gods of Hamath and Arpad? Where are the gods of Sepharvaim, Hena and Irva, and Samaria? Did their God save them? Can you name a God who saved anyone anywhere from me, the king of Assyria? So what makes you think that God can save Jerusalem from me?" The people were silent. No one spoke a word, for the king had ordered, "Don't anyone say a word, not one word." Then Eliakim, son of Hilkiah, the palace administrator, and Shebna, the royal secretary, and Joah, son of Asaph, the court historian, went back to Hezekiah. They ripped their robes in despair. They reported to Hezekiah the speech of the Rabshakeh. And we're going to stop there at chapter 19, and we can see what is going to happen tomorrow when we continue up on that. Yes, Sarah, that's very true. The Lord will deliver. You know, again, I love the Old Testament. I love how much it shows the character of God, of how much grace He gives us, how they can behave completely horribly, and then they have that moment of true repentance where God sees their heart and then He will forgive. I just love that about our God, and He's still like that. He still is after our hearts. All right, friends, I'm going to pray us out of here. Thank you so much, Lord, for bringing our friends here every single day, Monday through Friday at 7 a.m. Thank you for the encouragement they bring to each other. Thank you for their insights that they share when I'm reading the Word and they have something that they're gleaning that they want to share out, Lord. We love you, God. We love that you provided this Word, that you're demonstrating, you're showing us your character to help us, Lord, to be most like you. Lord, in all that we do, help us to honor you. In all that we do, help us to know that you are the only true God, and we want to do nothing but worship only you. No spirit but your Holy Spirit, have your way with my friends today. Lord, help us to have a rest of an incredible Wednesday and finish out the week strong. We love you, and it's in your name we pray. Amen. All right, friends, have a great day. I wish I could sit here and just lay by the pool today, but alas, it's a Wednesday, so it's a work day for me. So I'm about ready to go into the office. And yeah, how about you guys? You guys all off to work? Good morning, Kat. Hey, Kat, how are you doing? I miss you. Hey, Kareen, I see a couple people's names pop up, so I actually say goodbye. Goodbye, Brandy. Hi and goodbye, Brandy. And you guys have a fantastic day, all right? Love you all. Bye.